Joining us now is Charlie Savage, Washington correspondent for the New York Times, and the lead byline on this incredible piece of reporting in the Times. Charlie, thank you for being here tonight. We've been so eager to talk to you since the story first was published. And now we have a fair amount of pushback from the former AG, Bill Barr, who's, of course, a subject of this investigation. What is your initial reaction to his effective rebuttals and his overall sense that there's no there in terms of some of the very pressing questions that you raised in the piece?
Well, my first reaction was, oh, wow, he confirmed that there was an investigation involving Trump that Durham handled. So that's interesting. We didn't have anyone on the record confirming that before, and so that was nice of him. We still don't. I mean, maybe he's right that it went nowhere. We don't know. We just don't know what that thing was. We don't know what steps Durham took. We don't know what he found out. We don't know why he chose to bring no charges. Perhaps it was, as Bill Barr says, that there was no there. Nevertheless, it's extraordinary that it happened at all and that no one knew about it, and that when it leaked that Durham's administrative review had evolved into encompassing a criminal investigation, everyone thought that meant he had found evidence of a crime by the people who had investigated Trump in Russia, and the Justice Department let that misimpression linger when it was this very different thing. So at a minimum, it's extraordinary that Barr confirmed that indeed happened.
Yeah, I mean, and it is extraordinary. The fact of the matter is, exactly as you point out, the Justice Department let the impression that this was about the intelligence agencies and not Trump. They let that linger. Nobody had any suspicion that this was a criminal investigation into the former president. One of the things that Barr said,
involving him in some way.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just going to say, we don't know if it was into him or just proximate to him.
Somehow in the sphere of Trump, nonetheless not about the folks that launched the Russia investigation.
Exactly.
One of the sort of questionable acts you highlight in the piece is the appointment of John Durham to investigate this tip, right, into potential financial fraud, fraudulent criminal activities regarding finances. And Bill Barr defends his choice of John Durham into investigating this, saying the idea that there was a thin basis for appointing Durham doesn't hold water. Can you explain how and why the Times and your reporting suggests that it was actually a thin basis to appoint Durham?
Well, the reason that Barr put Durham into motion in the first instance was that Barr, while a private citizen, before Trump hires him to be attorney general, just watching Fox News, had come to the conclusion, the hunch, the suspicion that there was some kind of intelligence abuse at the heart of the Russia investigation, lurking in the origins of the Russia investigation. The CIA had done something, or MI5 had done something, the Italian intelligence service had done something. He just knew that that was the case. He came in as he was confirmed, telling his aides he knew this was the case and he was going to get to the bottom of it. When he got a briefing about the actual origin of the Russia investigation, he said he didn't buy it. And that is what set Durham into motion. Now, I think what he was saying was a technical matter to the LA Times, which was, at first, that was an administrative review. It was not a criminal investigation. So when you're just setting someone to look at things, which is sort of an odd thing for the Justice Department to do, but it does happen sometimes, you don't need a reasonable factual basis to suspect that a crime has taken place. You don't need a predicate. So that's what he sets Durham into motion on, just on his hunch. Now, of course, Durham does eventually open not just that side criminal investigation that involves Trump somehow, but an actual criminal investigation as his hunt for intelligence abuses that Barr thought was there hits a dead end, and there just aren't any that he can find. He doesn't close up shop. He says he and Barr decide that they're going to sort of morph this investigation into a different rationale, which is a hunt for a basis to accuse the Hillary Clinton campaign of defrauding the government by essentially framing Donald Trump for collusion. It was Hillary's fault that people, suspected Trump and Russia or wanted to know more about those connections. And was the theory, right, that they were pursuing. And that was a criminal investigation. They were going to a judge unsuccessfully trying to get something called a D order to get into private emails, and eventually using grand jury powers to get into private emails of a George Soros aide. You can't do that unless it's a criminal investigation. And ultimately, they do bring two narrow indictments against people with some, connection to the Clinton campaign on false statement charges, which Durham uses to insinuate this conspiracy that he was unable to prove or charge. And both of those cases ended in very swift acquittals, collapsed in court. But his point that when this thing started, it wasn't a criminal investigation, so I didn't need a solid basis. I could just do it. Is technically true insofar as it goes, but it doesn't explain the entirety of what happened here.
Dare I say, it doesn't hold water. Paraphrasing the former Attorney General himself. Charlie Savage, Washington correspondent for the New York Times. Thank you for the incredible reporting, Charlie. We have 1,000 questions to ask you. Please come back soon.